How's it going? And welcome to my guide on Chapter 4 of the 5th edition module, Tomb of Annihilation. Chapter 4 covers the Fane of the Night Serpent, the lair of the Yuan-Ti in the Forbidden City. Before I go any further, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. No players allowed. Get out of here. Send your DMs here. DMs that are already here, stay here because we've got a lot to cover. Alright, now that the players are gone, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Fane of the Night Serpent is the smallest chapter in all of the module Tomb of Annihilation, but even though it is the smallest, there is a lot of information packed in here. There's information regarding the area of itself, there's information on the named Yuan-Ti, and a lot of the named slaves and prisoners that your players will inevitably come across if they make their way into the Fane of the Night Serpent. Why do I say if? Chapter 4 is, strangely enough, one of the most skipped of the entire module. There is a lot of people that don't want to run this for their players, and I can certainly understand why you wouldn't. I have ran some groups in it, and I have ran some groups without it. So why run this and why not run this? It really just comes down to how your players interact with the NPCs in the world and how they've already interacted with the Yuan-Ti. If you want your players to run through here in a murder hobo spree of epic fighting with a ton of powerful enemies, and you want your players to get a whole bunch of XP and a whole bunch of cool loot and a whole bunch of gold, killing a whole bunch of bad guys and freeing a whole bunch of innocents, then go ahead and run this. If you want your players to be involved in a more roleplay element of subterfuge and maybe just open talks, then you're going to have to be very careful running this. The Yuan-Ti, as written, are not a kind folk. In fact, they are really, really evil. They will try to enslave people. They will try and murder people. And as you can see here on this map, that running red pool is not of sunshine and rainbows. That is a pool of their blood of the victims that they have killed. The way your players interact with the Yuan-Ti here could prove damning in any way, shape, or form if you want to have a roleplay element. And you always have to be wary because if your players walk through here and they see that there's a ton of Yuan-Ti, then you can't sugarcoat if they get into any type of fight. Otherwise, you're going to tip your hand that you're giving it too easy to them. You have to play this place very carefully. If you want, you can have a lot of the named NPCs go out into Omu, out into Chapter 3, and have them interact with the party that way. Maybe Raznisi goes out and gives the players some help. Maybe Fenthaza goes out and talks to them and tries to get them to kill Raznisi. Well, however the case may be, it's really up to you. I cannot recommend any one way or another because your group plays so entirely different, but you need to recognize if this dungeon is right for both you and your players. So, why would your players come here in the first place? As per written. The first one is, as per in the book written, when they are trying to get the puzzle cubes to get into the Tomb of the Nine Gods, if they take too long, Raznisi is going to uncover that piece of information, and he is going to take some of the puzzle cubes and bring them here, essentially luring the party to the Fane. And it even states that the Yuan-Ti are purposely going to leave tracks that lead to the Fane of the Night Serpent. So, your players really want the puzzle cubes. They march straight into the Fane of the Night Serpent and totally walk into a trap. That's the first suggestion. The second suggestion is the fact that they are captured. If they get into a fight that's a little bit too hard, if they had the guide Selita and Selita lured them astray, if they just get nighttime ambushed and totally kerplunked in a fight, they are brought back here not as free people but as prisoners and are essentially forced to do a lot of slave labor in here before a means of escaping presents itself. The third way in which it says that your players could arrive in here is if the group, your party, interacts with the Red Wizards of Thay and want to uncover more information on the Yuan-Ti. The Red Wizards will actually say that they have an inside man, and that inside man just so happens to be a doppelganger. This doppelganger has taken the form of a Yuan-Ti, who is now part of Raznisi's harem. So, your players have a lot of ways why, maybe a lot of different motivations as to why they get here, and they eventually get here. How do they get here? More than likely, they're going to go through the front entrance. The front entrance up here to the north is out in the open. It's a lot more prominent that the Yuan-Ti come through here, and it's just, and as per written, it is the more likely area to go in. However, there is another area. Down in the south, there is in fact a secret entrance and exit that your players could either accidentally stumble upon or actually go through on purpose. Whichever way your players go in, they're in for a pretty rough time if they just go in for a fight. The Yuan-Ti are all strong, and that includes the lowest of the low being the Brood Guards to the highest of the high being all the Malisans. Magic resistance all over the place, high pools of HP, lots of attacks, and also very, very important, there is just a ton of them. You're going to see here in this chapter that there is a huge table on reinforcements and on what will be where at what time. All right, then, let's go ahead and dive right into if your players are walking in this thing. If they come in, no questions asked. They're big old honking adventurers, and they're coming here to mess some stuff up. They're just going to be in for a fight. However, it is suggested that they could try and pass off as Yuan-Ti purebloods. If they wrap themselves up in some robes, if they have some people on some leashes as prisoners or slaves, then they could, in fact, try and pass themselves off. This will require some deception checks and will require them to kind of maneuver about and act like they know what they're doing. If they do this, they can theoretically walk around all over the place and try to get information and on all the areas, and uh, probably it would not be smart to interact with all the Yuan-Ti, but interact with enough of the Yuan-Ti in a subtle way that they could try and glean as much information on this place as possible. So, once your players either decide to walk in or sneak in, uh, they are going to uncover all the areas here. So let's go ahead and discuss who are the key NPCs here. We have Raznisi. Raznisi, a old paladin of Ubtao who led armies of undead once Ubtao betrayed him, or he betrayed Ubtao. He shed his mortal coil and led the Yuan-Ti from Hisari to Omu, where he became the Malisan that he is now. He is dying. He died a long time ago, and ever since the death curse took place, he has been getting worse and worse. What does that mean stats-wise? Well, the game actually says that he starts off with HP, and then you subtract 1 for each day that passes during the adventure. I don't know what game people are running that they are speed running to Omu within a couple of days. But every single time I've ran it, and most important of all the NPC, all the groups that I've talked to about having ran this adventure, they've said that their journeys all across the jungles of Chult have taken so much time, dozens, like hundreds of days even. In fact, one of my groups, I took track of every single day that they did. They didn't get to Omu until 350 days in, like a full year. So having this subtract 1 for each day that passes during the adventure, I don't know if that really holds up well because it usually takes a long time to get to Omu. If your group is speedrunning the bejesus out of this, then good for them. Then you should totally run it as written. But if you're one of the more traditional groups that is taking a long time in the jungles, running back and forth into the jungle and back to Port Nanzaru, then I would suggest probably capping it at you only subtract 1 hit point per, I don't know, 10 days or something. Or maybe just keep it at, it starts off at 127 HP, maybe just drop it down to 100. Something real simple. Regardless, though, you should have it note that his skin is totally ragged. You should make it aware that if your players interact with this person, or if the players interact with someone who has interacted with Razanisi, that his skin is totally peeling off. His voice is getting gnarly. He is decaying. Next up, we have Fenthaza. Fenthaza is the second in command of the Yuan-Ti. She is not happy with current management. She doesn't like Raznisi, and she really wants to shake the ship, as it were. She wants a uh, new management in order. However, she realized that if she were to just straight up challenge him, she would lose because the dude is very strong and he's got some magical items, and he's also got, of course, everyone's loyalty as of right this second. So she is going to try and connive and deceive both the players and Raznisi in order to get Raznisi killed so that she can take command. How is she going to do that? Well, I've had her personally do some various things to help the party along with that. One of which being transforming some players into Yuan-Ti. And yes, that is a thing. We are totally getting that in a moment. If she can try and convince some of the players to try and kill Raznisi for her, then she can take control of the Yuan-Ti and she can start doing all the nefarious evil things that she wants to do. One of which is, of course, killing the party because she doesn't want any loose strings. So, as we take a look here at the schemes of the Yuan-Ti, there is a big ol' list on infiltrating the temple, captured by the Yuan-Ti, meeting with Raznisi, meeting with Fenthaza, and a huge roster on what reinforcements show up at what time and who is in what room at any given time. This is huge. You should not commit this to memory by any means. There's way too much information to look at. I would strongly suggest that you go ahead and just have that in the background. But mind you, these are really good things to basically enhance the flavor of this place. If you're running it either in person or online, don't just have the token static at all times whatsoever. You should be moving tokens around. You should make this place feel like it's lived in, make it feel like it's real. You should describe the various evil sounds. You should describe the horrible screams of slaves and people getting killed and eaten. And you should describe how, if you roll up on this random table, that cult fanatics show up and they give an offering to Raznisi to earn his praise, and et cetera, et cetera. Really good tables here to really make this place come to life and make it so that you don't have to do any work, really. This does all the work for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into every little location here in this place. So as you can tell here, the numbers go basically in order of how you would more than likely walk through this area. So let's get to it. All right, Area 1, the main gate. The main gate, as it suggests, is the main gate. More than likely, your players are going to come through here as this is the more prominent area. They might follow some Yuan-Ti back here. They might be told about it. They might have learned about it. Whatever the case may be, they're probably going to learn about this main gate. This main gate is basically held by several Yuan-Ti here. We've got a couple of Brood Guard, as well as a Malison. Something important to note about this chapter is there's a ton of little areas here where the Yuan-Ti is given like a special little name, and it's also given a brief description on how this specific Yuan-Ti interacts. This Yuan-Ti named Noth is a greedy person and is willing to accept bribes. I mean, it's a little bit odd that this dude's willing to accept bribes, but whatever floats his boat, I guess. He probably doesn't care. He just works here, you know. So something a little cool to note about the gate here is that past the gate is a snake pit area, and if the pit is essentially raised, then the Yuan-Ti can try and push players into the snake pit, or they'll totally get Indiana Jones's worst nightmare of falling into a pit of snakes and probably bit up. Area 2, the Hall of War. The Hall of War is filled with a whole bunch of nasty crawlies in the form of basilisk and a triceratops. These basilisks have actually been trained so well that they do not look at the Yuan-Ti. However, they are willing to look at people that do not fit the MO. So if your players are hacking and slashing through here, then they're going to start closing their eyes. And for a lot of people, no matter what level you are, closing your eyes in the middle of a fight is usually bad news bears. In addition to this area, there is a Triceratops in the corner, and if some bad stuff starts going on, the Triceratops will start rampaging. Fighting blind against a Triceratops and a whole bunch of Yuan-Ti reinforcements is no fun at all. It's also funny to note there's a giant cobra statue, and it literally just says the statue's not dangerous and your players can climb up on it. I don't know why they felt the need to put that there, but it's there. Also, something to note is that there is wagons, and it's presumed that they use these wagons to, pull in and out various supplies that they find and prisoners that they capture. Area 3, Hall of Serpents. So the Hall of the Serpents is pretty cool. There's just a whole bunch of, pillars that are running down the length of this place. And they actually describe in a little bit of detail Dendar. Dendar being the Night Serpent. The reason why the Yuan-Ti are here at all in the first place is because they believe that they can resurrect this snake god, and by doing so, the snake god Dendar will consume the world, and everyone will have nightmares, and the world will end, and it'll be terrible. What's really odd here is your players actually, if they spend a bit of time looking at the reliefs on the side depicting all this tale of Raz Nisi and the Yuan-Ti terrorizing Choltans and Dendar and all that, they can actually find a button along the wall. And if they press this button, they'll have to start making con saves or be poisoned. And being poisoned is not good because disadvantage on everything. But also something very important to remember is that Yuan-Ti are immune to poison. So the Yuan-Ti could totally be fighting people, and one of them could totally press this button. They don't care. They're not going to get poisoned, but the players are going to have to make con saves. Pretty big deal. Area 4, the Armory. So the Armory, it looks like a plain door. However, it actually cannot be opened natively unless they succeed an incredible athletics check or if they use the knock spell. Normally, the only way you can access this armory is if you say the command word, which officially only 3 people know: Raznisi, Sekolek, and Fenthaza. If they say the command word, which is white feather, the door can be opened normally. As soon as they walk in, they're actually greeted by a large armory, of course, and a bone naga. The bone naga, Urkurlahamu, Ukurlamu, so many crazy names in this. Ukurlamu is basically here to protect the armory, which is insane because you can only get into this armory if you already did something crazy in the first place. But whatever. If you have to talk to this bone naga, and if you don't tell the bone naga a catchphrase as well, a passphrase, which is Black Mask, then the bone naga not only attacks but also summons 2 Minotaur skeletons to attack you as well. Pretty big deal. So what do they get for overcoming this incredible door and overcoming the bone naga and the Minotaur skeletons? Well, they get access to a couple of weapons, not really that impressive. And there's a magical shield here, which essentially has the thaumaturgy spell cast on it, but it only has the property of it enhances your voice. A lot of work for not a lot of reward, if you ask me. maybe there should be some cooler weapon stored in there for your players to find if they're willing to go through all this trouble. Area 5, Fenthaza's quarters. Fenthaza, being the second in command, she actually gets her own little area, and her area is not too far away from the front door, which I personally wouldn't want a door near the front entrance to anything. That sounds miserable. But she has a permanent retinue that is always protecting her, so that really helps out. If your players are to run in here and cause a commotion and the fighting and all that, then she'll actually summon an air elemental, and that air elemental is going to try and murder whoever she tries to sick it on. However, if your players come in here on more talkative terms, then they are going to discover that Fenthaza is going to set up the players to try and kill Raznisi. How does she go about doing that? How does she get the players in this predicament in the first place? Well, if the players are captured, then she is going to have them do menial tasks and labors, which of there is a huge chart written. If they do these for a full day without getting themselves killed, which I've got a story to tell about that. If your players survive doing these menial tasks, then Fenthaza is actually going to quietly sneak these people off and say, hey, I want you guys to kill Raznisi for me. In exchange, I'll let you go free. I'll give you all your gear back, yada yada, blah blah blah. She will totally lie, cheat, and steal, and do whatever it takes to get the players to try and do this. And she will feign innocence if the players fail, but she will totally be down for everything if she succeeds. She is not to be trusted, and she will totally betray the party. But you got to be careful of betrayal because if your players get into an epic, you know, massive fight with Raznisi, and they're totally wounded, out of spells and out of resources, and then Fenthaza just shows up with another, massive horde and says, "All right, kill them." That seems a little unfair to me. So you give them time to breathe, and then let the betrayal, kind of sink in. Betrayal's a lot more fun, when it takes its time. So, in Fenthaza's area, not really too much going on here. A whole bunch of loot in regards of gold, but nothing really exciting happening. Area 6, the Sacrificial Chamber. So as you can see here, the Sacrificial Chamber is not pretty. There's a nice little stone slab where people are essentially tied to and cut up and drained of their blood. And when their blood is drained, it essentially goes down a fountain and creates a massive pool for Yuan-Ti to bathe in and enjoy. Really no fun at all. Something really cool about this room, and something I really want to see more often, and something I'm totally going to write into my future adventures, is that there's a cool little area of effectability going on in this room. If for any reason combat goes out in this room, the skulls that are lining along the walls will begin chanting. And when they do, all Yuan-Ti in the area have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons, and advantage on saving throws against spells and other effects. That little buff there can make fighting in this area really scary, and if your players don't pick up on the fact that they need to either not fight in this area or destroy the skulls, a prolonged fight could be pretty dangerous. This is the room where if your players are captured and they are being naughty and you are a DM who is tough but totally fair, you're going to bring them to this room and the Yuan-Ti are going to slay them. This is definitely one of those areas where if you're running a hardcore game, then and you don't hold back, then you're going to kill some PCs here if they're caught. But if you're running a game that is more action noir based and PCs die a lot less frequently, then this is going to be something where if your players are captured and one of them is about to get sacrificed, then at the last second something major has to happen. That's always something to keep in mind. Area 7, the Evil Oracle. Area 7 is a little bit weird. Basically, there's three Yuan-Ti here. They're totally loyal to Fenthaza, and they are essentially Yuan-Ti priest. They look into this pool and they basically deduce what Dendar the Night Serpent is dreaming up. This pool is totally bad for non-Yuan-Ti, though. If your players look in this pool, they're going to start having to make wisdom saving throws, and if they fail, they are going to take psychic damage and also be afflicted with long-term madness. Not fun at all. And if for some dumb reason they are fighting in this room and they fall into the sludge, then they are also going to be taking psychic damage from that as well. Long-term madness is no joke. There are some madness maladies that won't affect too many players, but there is certainly enough that can certainly ruin players for the foreseeable future. And if they're currently in the midst of fighting, long-term madness can certainly hinder certain builds. Area 8 Prisoner Pits. The prisoner pits are essentially pits that are built into the floor and flooded with a little bit of water. Very gross, and also gross is the fact that a whole bunch of people are thrown into this room. And your players, if they're captured or they storm in here, they're going to find several other prisoners as well. Instead of having to come up with the prisoners on the dot, though, thankfully this module comes with a really awesome list of already pre-generated prisoners that could be here. This list is awesome. We've got Tavo, a 10-year-old boy, and it really sucks to have a 10-year-old that you gotta babysit when you're fighting Yuan-Ti. We've got a Tabaxi minstrel who came all the way from Port Nyanzaru and is just a little minstrel. We've got a goblin who's exhausted. We have a pirate from one of the pirate ships, the Dragonfang. Whole bunch of awesome list here, just immediately gushing with roleplay opportunities. Fantastic stuff, and I love to see this kind of stuff. In fact, most of the time when I run this, I throw all these prisoners in here because every single one of them can add something awesome. So you might be wondering, what is that weird little symbol? What is that green circle with that weird symbol in the middle there? That is a teleporter. Built all around this temple are several teleporters. These teleporters are for Raz Nisi only. Raz Nisi is able to slither up to one of these and say a magical word and teleport to any one of the other teleporters that is located in this temple. Raz Nisi can do this for free. However, your players are going to have a bit of a harder time with this, as they first must succeed a pretty hard Arcana check just to understand how to use the teleporter. And even when they use the teleporter, they don't know where they're going to appear. They will appear at a randomly determined one, which you should just roll for. Area 9, the Fane. The Fane, as in the Fane of the Night Serpent, is essentially the cathedral, the gathering area, the creme de la creme of this place. Special notes around here is a giant gong, a pool of bathing blood, a balcony only accessible by teleportation, and a burning cauldron for some reason. This is the area where if the Yuan-Ti have any social gathering, it is going to be done here as it can accommodate all. Lots of space, place for people to bathe in blood. There's the balcony where Raznisi can give his speeches. All that fun jazz. If your players are engaged in an epic fight with the Yuan-Ti, they'll probably hear the gong get rung multiple times. That is to signify that they are under attack and the Yuan-Ti should prepare. This is also the part of the module which states that some of your players may be turned into Yuan-Ti. Why would they be turned into Yuan-Ti? Maybe they purposely ask to get turned into Yuan-Ti. Maybe Fenthaza purposely transforms some people into Yuan-Ti to get them closer to Raznisi in order to kill Raznisi. Whatever the case may be, transforming a PC into a Yuan-Ti is pretty big deal. It has both roleplay and gameplay ramifications. The important thing to note about being transformed into Yuan-Ti is that, as per written, only humans can be transformed into Yuan-Ti. More often than not, there's a human or two floating around in a group, but if you don't have a human in your group, or not any that's willing to be transformed into Yuan-Ti, you might be willing to amend that and have them transformed. However, being transformed into a Yuan-Ti is a pretty significant deal. It states that if they are transformed, they keep all of their stats and traits, and also gain whatever benefits that are listed here, such as Dark Vision, the innate spellcasting of Poison Spray, Animal Friendship on snakes, and Suggestion. They gain magic resistance and poison immunity. If you are running one of those, high action, you love your players and give them sweet tricks and treats game, then have at it. Let them become Yuan-Ti. But I'm going to tell you that just flat out giving Yuan-Tidom to certain players, it's pretty significant. In some ways, it actually debalances the player, makes them overpowered. It does state, though, that when they do transform into a Yuan-Ti, they take 1d6 points of exhaustion, meaning that, as per written, if they have 6 levels of exhaustion, they die. So that's a pretty big deal. And it also states that they gain a definite form of madness, which can certainly lead to a lot of roleplay elements. If you are the type of DM that would allow one or more PC to become a Yuan-Ti, I would highly recommend running it as written. They should suffer exhaustion for this. They should roleplay out their indefinite madness, and they should suffer the ramifications of the social aspect of being a Yuan-Ti. Yuan-Ti do not get along with society. They are slavers. They are mean. They are evil. They are murderers. They are just not good people. And if it becomes painfully apparent that someone is a Yuan-Ti, they probably wouldn't adjust well back in society if they've got fangs or if they've got snake arms or if they've got scales growing everywhere. So to that regard, it doesn't actually state if your players become Yuan-Ti, it doesn't actually state what they end up looking like. There is no table, sadly, on what they look like, what form of Yuan-Tidom they get. But you should look into the Yuan-Ti pureblood that's in Volo's Guide to Monsters. You probably should look at some of the other Yuan-Ti that are in this book. A perfect example is Selita. Selita has scales that can be easily hidden if she just wears normal clothes. Same with a lot of purebloods. A lot of Yuan-Ti purebloods can wear clothes and just get away with it. But if for some reason your player, gets something that makes them more apparent, or if they don't like wearing clothes, then that should, be a part of that social aspect. Can they adjust back into society? Whether you allow the PCs to become Yuan-Ti or not, you should make it to the point where those players should be aware that those play characters don't want to be Yuan-Ti anymore, because becoming a Yuan-Ti does come with its own set of bad news, and maybe that can be a future quest of trying to get rid of their Yuan-Tidom, which can only be undone one of two ways. It can only either be undone by a wish spell, or it can be undone with divine intervention. That being said, if your player characters do end up becoming Yuan-Ti, they are still only Yuan-Ti purebloods, and thus next to the lowest on the caste system around here. So while they can move around freely, they will still be looked down upon by the higher being Yuan-Tis, such as all the Malisons and everything else. But this will allow them to actually get close enough to Raznisi in order to possibly assassinate him. Area 10, the Harem. Raznisi, being the leader in this place, had the luxury of having a harem at his disposal. This harem consisted of a whole bunch of scantily clad humanoids with eyes like those of snakes and scaly patches for arms, necks, legs, backs, etc. Basically, long story short, Raznisi no longer uses this harem. Ever since he's suffered that whole dying aspect, he really doesn't come around to the harem that often. The Harem knows about this. They know that his body is withering and he doesn't want to come around here anymore. So if your players are able to talk to some of the what is the polite word they use for the concubines? If your players come around to the concubines that are around here, they can possibly learn some information. But even more so, they will actually learn something very important to note. One, there is a doppelganger spy here. The Red Wizards have a doppelganger spy named Ish McCall. Ish McCall is a very interesting character because he was sent here to spy on the Yuan-Ti, but even in reality, he came here and he likes this place way more than working with the Red Wizards, and he's actually willing to turn on the Red Wizards and on the party if it ensures him favor. So if your players try and confide into the doppelganger, they could get metaphorically bitten here, and that's not very good. Also, very important to note is Raznisi has a elite bodyguard named Sekolek. Sekolek is the stat of a champion. He is extremely strong. He's a CR10 by himself. Like he's a monster. But what's funny here is that it actually states that he is having a secret love affair with one of the harem. He sneaks away into the night to meet his love, and this is not good. If anybody, more importantly, if Raznisi were to find out about this relationship, then he will actually have Sekolek killed. So you could possibly use that to your advantage, possibly get rid of one of the major obstacles in your path to killing Raznisi. Area 11, the throne room. The throne room is where Raznisi, funnily enough here, it actually says air quotes sits because he is in fact a snake from the lower half, so sitting's probably a little bit uncomfortable for him. This is where he basically resides throughout the most of the day. This is where he meets all of the people that come to see him and where he doles out his orders. This is the area where if your players are basically given an audience with Raznisi, this is where they're going to find themselves in this little open area here. Something important to note about this area is there is multiple entrances and exits. There is a teleporter here and here. And also interesting enough, hidden behind the throne are several ghouls. And the ghouls will pop out and attack if any combat goes on. It doesn't really say specifically how they hide, but they're just hiding back there. It must be a really big throne that, regardless. This is also where your players are more likely to find Sekolek. Sadly, even though Sekolek is a named character, he is not given a token, so you are going to have to find your own art for him to use unless you're willing to put up a token with just the name. But what's interesting here is that there is also a secret door, and that secret door leads to Area 12, which is Raznisi's lair. The secret door is basically a way for Raznisi to retreat to his room if for some reason the teleporter is blocked off, if there is a combat engagement. Also, to the east, there is an opening, and that opening actually leads to a watery path, and that watery path is actually the home of a Hydra, which Raznisi feeds regularly slaves, prisoners, and the corpses of the defeated and the people that piss them off. Not really too much to say here. This is definitely an area where a lot of combat has definitely seen place, as players are more than likely going to try and spring some type of assault here in this room because this is probably one of the best ways that they can honestly get to Raz and C. Area 12, Raz Nisi's Lair. So as you can probably tell by the map, and as we'll see in the little treasure dump here, this place is loaded. A ton of gold, a ton of loot, a ton of awesome stuff. This place is great. If your players have an epic fight in this lair, what's also really cool to note is there's a nice little mechanic. Raznisi has a whole bunch of enchanted shields in here, and if your players go up and fight him in here, there is a cool little mechanic of the flying shields give him 2 AC each. There's 5 shields that flow around, giving him a total of plus 10 to AC. If someone rolls an attack and would hit him without the shields, then one of the shields basically it's battered down and it basically took an attack. So your players will over time eventually whittle down all these shields and drop them down to his AC. His AC is natively only 15. Your players are more than likely at this level. Your players more than likely are going to be levels 7, 8, 9, or 10 when going into the Fane of the Night Serpent. So hitting 15 shouldn't be too hard. So if your players end up looting Razanisi's lair here, you get a whole paragraph of awesome loot and swag, which includes a whole bunch of art objects in gold. It includes Razanisi's spellbook, and it includes more gems and gold. Also important to note, if you had Razanisi steal some of the puzzle cubes, this is where the players are going to find those puzzle cubes.